Let's go ahead and talk about stock appreciation rates. Stock appreciation rates give the holder the right to receive in cash the appreciation or increase in the stock price above some base level. So for example, if you grant your CEO 100,000 stock appreciation rights when the stock price is $20 per share, the base price will be equal to $20 per share, the stock price on the date of grant. If the stock price rises to $25, the CEO can cash in his stock appreciation rights and receive in cash the $5 increase in the share price from the $20 base price to the $25 current stock price. Stock appreciation rights have the exact same payoff to the recipient as stock options. They simply dispense with the need to actually purchase the stock in order to realize the profit. Again, if these were stock options, the CEO would buy the shares at $20, turn around and sell them at $25, and pocket the $5 profit. Now we simply give them the $5 profit. Much easier. Now, although stock appreciation rights have the same payoff as stock options to the recipient, they're accounted for in a drastically different fashion. Now, in the case of stock options, we estimate the value of stock options on the date of grant, and we stick with that value until the end. If the stock options soar or plummet in value, we still rely on the value estimated on the date of grant and allocate that expense over the service period. In the case of stock appreciation rights, we're going to need to continually revise our estimate of what these things are worth. This is necessary because they're going to be ultimately settled by a cash payment, so we need to have a liability on our balance sheet corresponding to the amount that we have to pay out. Let's go ahead and start with a simple example. It's going to be a single example, not so simple perhaps. Assume that on January 1st, 2010, ABC Company grants 100,000 stock appreciation rights to their chief executive officer. The current stock price, and therefore the base price, is $40 per share, and the service period is 3 years. The service period, just as was the case with stock options, is the period over which we're going to allocate the expense, the period over which the person is expected to work harder. And the stock appreciation rights can be exercised anytime after 12/31/12, again after that 3-year service period. And let's assume we've got the following pattern of stock prices. At the end of 2010, the stock price rises to $52. At the end of 2011, it falls a little bit to $49. And then at the end of 2012, it falls even further to $45. Now, at the end of the first year, 12/31/10, first thing we have to do is estimate what is this SAR package going to cost us. Well, based upon the current stock price, which is the best information we have, there are 100,000 stock appreciation rights. The stock price has appreciated by $12 from the $40 base price to the $52 current price. So based upon what we know at the end of 2010, this thing is going to cost us $1.2 million. Since 1/3 of the service period has elapsed, we should have recognized 1/3 of that total compensation cost. So the cumulative compensation expense and at the same time the stock appreciation right liability should be equal to 1/3 of the $1.2 million total cost, or $400,000. So the current stock appreciation rights liability is 0 because we just started this thing, so we're going to need a $400,000 adjustment. So we go ahead and record compensation expense of $400,000 and record the stock appreciation right liability of $400,000. At the end of 2011, the stock price has fallen a little bit down to $49, but again, we're going to follow the same pattern. Based upon what we know at the end of 2011, this stock appreciation right plan is going to cost us $900,000, 100,000 rights times $9 per right. Now 2/3 of the service period has elapsed. Since 2/3 of the service period has elapsed, we should have recorded cumulative compensation expense, and we should have an SAR liability equal to 2/3 of the expected total cost, or $600,000. The current balance in the SAR liability is $400,000. I would strongly recommend keeping a T account to keep track of that stock appreciation right liability. The current balance is $400,000 from last year's entry, so we need a $200,000 increase in the stock appreciation right liability. So we record another $200,000 of compensation expense and record another $200,000 of stock appreciation right liability. Moving on to the next year, there's our data set again. And again, it's now the end of 2012. The stock price has fallen to $45. So again, we're going to follow the same pattern. The estimated total cost of the stock appreciation rights is $500,000. 100,000 rights times $5 of appreciation per share. 3/3 or 100% of the service period has elapsed, so the cumulative compensation expense, or the stock appreciation right liability, should be 100% of that $500,000 or $500,000. Looking at our stock appreciation rights T account, looking at our stock appreciation right liability T account, the current balance there is $600,000, so we need to reduce that by $100,000. So we debit the SAR liability and credit or reduce compensation expense in the current year. So the service period is completely done. We've gone through the 3-year service period, but the stock appreciation rights are still live. They still exist, and the potential liability is going to continue to change as the stock price changes. So let's assume that at the end of 2013, the stock price has risen to $55. Even though the service period has elapsed, we still need to make adjustments so that the liability equals the expected cost of the award. The estimated total cost now is 100,000 rights times $15 of appreciation, or $1.5 million. 100% of the service period has elapsed, so the liability should equal 100% of 1.5 million, or 1.5 million. The current liability balance is $500,000. We need to boost that up to 1.5 million, so we need to add $1 million to the stock appreciation rights liability. So we go ahead and increase the SAR liability and record another $1 million of compensation expense. Again, this seems a little odd. Even though the service period has elapsed, we're continuing to adjust compensation expense. Now, so the balance in the stock appreciation right liability is $1.5 million as of the end of 2013. Let's go ahead and assume now that early March 2014, 20,000 of the stock appreciation rights are exercised when the stock price is $52. This means that we have to pay the holder 20,000 times the $12 of appreciation, the current stock price minus the base price of 40, or $240,000. And in doing so, we're paying off part of the stock appreciation right liability. Note that we don't have to adjust compensation expense or the SAR liability to reflect the change in the stock price today. We'll do that at the end of the year as part of our normal adjusting entry. So on March 12th, 2014, we write a check for $240,000, and that pays off a chunk of the SAR liability. Now let's assume that at the end of 2014, the stock price is $51. We're going to follow the exact same process as before, but now you need to be careful because the number of rights has changed. The estimated total liability, we've now got 80,000 rights remaining, times the current value per right of $11, the $51 current stock price, minus the $40 base price, so the estimated total liability should be $880,000. The current liability balance is $1,260,000, our $1.5 million balance from the end of last year, less the $240,000 that we paid out just a moment ago. So we need a balance of $880,000. We've got a balance of $1,260,000, so we need to reduce the liability by $380,000. So we go ahead and debit the SAR liability and credit compensation expense. This process will continue until all of the rights are either exercised or until they expire.